All right, this is the last video on A and B, and then part 2 of 2.5, we're going to move on to C and D. So what we're going to do is just put it all together. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this, and I've taught it different ways in different semesters, and I've kind of come to a place where I really think points are the best way to go, but I'll show you what I mean. So when you're doing transformations, no matter what the graph is, I like to find my key points. Let's do that first. So we've got this point here, 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 and here. So this one has 4 key points. So we've got -5, 0. We've got 0, 4. We've got 1, 0. And we've got 4, 3. So by key points, I'm looking for things that are like turnaround points, or anything where the graph sort of changes shape, or anything that I might need to be like, oh, how am I going to replicate this shape? Now this is like 1, 2, 3 straight lines, so I just have to make sure I know where those 3 straight lines start and end. Then for me, I just look at, well, what's affecting X and what's affecting Y? So this is a transformation on Y. In fact, it's taking my Y values and it's multiplying them by -0.5. If I was to describe this transformation, I would say it's a reflection of the Y values over the x-axis. That's the negative. And then the half is going to be a vertical shrink by a half. So some questions just ask you to do that. They're like, hey, here's your graph. What would this transform graph look like? Oh, it's just a reflection of the Y values of the x-axis and a vertical shrink by half. But actually doing it, I do them both at the same time. I just take my Y values and I multiply them by -0.5. So if I go through and do that, this point is going to stay -5, 0. So any transformation on Y, if the Y value is 0, it's not going to change. So this one and this one, so this one as well is going to stay 1, 0. But these ones, I'm going to take the Y value and multiply by -0.5, or divide by -2, whatever you want to think of. So I'm going to get 0, -2. And this point here times by -0.5, yuck. It's going to be 4 and -3/2, and sometimes that happens. All right, so let's graph these. We've got -5, 0. We've got 0, -2. We've got 1, 0, and we've got 4 and 3/2. So now luckily this is set. Oh no, it's not. So 1, 2, so 3/2 is 1.5. There we go. Nope, -1.5. Woohoo. All right, so we've got, this is my transform graph. And I've done it all, right? I can look at this and I can say, okay, it's been reflected the Y values over the x-axis and it's been vertically shrunk by a half. But I did it all in one, and people kind of can get confused by that. So this is how I've started teaching this, is by points. And I just transform the points and then I plot them. So if you're okay with that, that's what you're going to stick with. Alternatively, what you do is one transformation at a time in order from left to right. In other words, we're going to do the reflection first. So I would take all my Y values. I don't have to write any points this way. I'm going to take all my Y values and I'm going to reflect them over the x-axis. So this point will stay, this one will go down to -4, this one will stay, and this one will go down to 3. And I get this intermediary graph. And so when it's intermediary, I graph it in a different color, or I at least use a dashed line to show that it's not a final answer. Then I could compress it vertically by a half. So this point would stay the same, this one would come up to -2, this one would stay the same, and then this one would go half the distance. And then I wouldn't have been so bumbly, right? Because I would have been like, oh, it's half the distance, okay. And then I can just connect my dots. So when you're doing more than one transformation, the moral of the story is you can do each transformation one at a time, and your graph will change and then change and then change and then change. Or you pull out some key points and you transform them, put them back on your graph, and then you just have one final answer. Totally up to you. Okay. Pause the video if you feel confident, but we're going to give this one a go. So first thing I'm going to do is pull out my key points. So I've got a point here at -3, 0. I've got a point here at -2, 2. I've got here at 0, 0. I got a point here at 2, 2. And lastly, I've got a point here at 3, 0. Okay, what transformations am I doing? Well, this is going to cause it to vertically stretch by 3. In other words, my y values are going to multiply by 3. The negative is going to reflect the x values over the y-axis, and the half is going to horizontally stretch by 2. Remember, opposite as it appears. Okay, so we can do that in order. We could do them one at a time, and we could do a new graph, right? So let's do that first this time. So I'm going to vertically stretch by 3. If you're a points person, don't write this down. So I'm going to vertically stretch by 3. So this point would go up to 6. This point would stay the same, and this one would go up to 6. So this is my vertical stretch by 3. Then I would move on and I would reflect my x values over the y-axis. So this -3 is going to go to +3. This -2 is going to go to +2. Look at that. It's not going to change the graph at all. Here's going to stay here. And this point here is going to go over to here and then down here. So there's another graph, but these ones are the same color or different color, same graph. So I've reflected my x values over the y-axis, and now I'm going to compress my x values by half. And you can see how this sort of starts getting confusing. And for a long time, this is how I taught transformations, because I like the visualness of it. Like, I like to see it stretching. I like it to see it reflecting. I like to see it stretching now. So I'm going to multiply all my x values by 2. So this -3 would go to -6. This -2 would go to -4. This one would stay the same. Then I would stretch this guy. My 2 would become 4, and my 3 would become 6. And so you can visually see the changes, right? That's the only thing I like. Whoops. That's the only thing that I like about that method. You can visually see the graph transforming, okay? Most people would prefer to do it this way. Let's do it with points. So what am I going to do to my points? My x values, I'm going to horizontally, I'm going to reflect them. So I'm going to times them by a -1, and I'm going to stretch it by 2. So my x values are going to get multiplied by 2, and my y values are going to get multiplied by 3. And let's see what my new points would be. So multiply by -2, multiply by 3, I end up with 6, 0. And we're going to check, actually, let's do this in green so that we get the same, because I'm getting the final green graph. So I get +6, 0. Do I have a point there? Yep. There it is. Then I'm going to do the same thing. Multiply by -2, multiply by 3. I get a 0.46. Did I get one? Yep, there it is. Multiply by -2, multiply by 3 isn't going to change it. 0, 0. Checking it. There it is. This one, I like writing it too. Multiply by -2, multiply by 3. So I get -4,6. Let's check it. -4,6. There it is. And then lastly, this guy, multiply by -2, multiply by 3 is going to get me -6, 0. And there it is. So you can see graphing your transformations in order, one at a time, gives you the visual representation of what's happening. Or you can do it with your points and look to see what happened overall. There's benefits to both. I think the points are cleaner. You only end up with one final graph on your grid, but maybe you don't know if you did the right things. Did it reflect? I don't know. Maybe, right? Did it stretch? Well, I can kind of see that, right? I can see a vertical stretch and I can see a horizontal stretch. But up to you, whatever you want to do. But go and practice those.